Hey, family. Good evening. Welcome to Monica May's One Take Live. Before we start, I always ask you to please help us spread the word. Tap like and click the share button. Invite your family, your friends, and your followers to be a part of this conversation. Always know that we rest and reside on YouTube, but you can also catch us on Spotify. We're on Apple or any of your favorite streaming platforms. I am so grateful for the increase. I will say that. Tonight, our topic is how crisis strengthened this mother and daughter bond. Our subtitle, of course, is mental wellness in the Black community. We're going to be specific to or inclusive of the caring loved one. Mental illness is recognized primarily through dysfunctional behavior. In other words, when a person starts, quote unquote, acting differently, it's extremely difficult to diagnose and treat. However, not unlike other medical conditions, loved ones of people living with mental disorders are not only first responders, they're pushed into the role of crisis interventionists, therapists, case management, while at the same time trying to protect the privacy and the dignity of the loved one who's being cared for, as well as keep their own mental health in check. Battling the stigma, the ugliness that comes with the territory as well is difficult to manage. But who is caring for them? And where do they learn the technical skills and the coping strategies that are essential to their own well being, their own mental illness, and their wellness, and provide insight on the day to day life of someone living with a major medical condition? So, our focus tonight, like I said, is going to be on the patient, of course, but we want to really give kudos and love on the caring loved one. I want you to meet tonight Denise Epps, an educated sister if I ever met one. I gotta tell you, who for the looks of it had it all together until she didn't. And her daughter, Alaina Ritchie, who just hearing something in her mom's voice and following God's lead, left college to come home and care for her mom. Tonight, we're going to share their story. So, good evening, Denise. Hey, Alaina.
Hey,
How are you
Monica.
both?
Always good to be with you.
Thank you so much for not finding it robbery to take just a few minutes to just unpack your story. And I'm telling you, help a lot of people. I'm going to start with Alaina. Lena, when did you first suspect that your mom may be in some type of trouble mentally? What did it look like?
That's a great question. I will say it looked a little different than what people think. I was in high school. A little backstory. I was lucky enough for my mom to retire when I was in middle school, it seems like.
Wow.
So her day to day didn't look like the normal 9 to 5 that most of my peers were going through. So early on in high school, my house was the house. And so the change, my house looked like the quintessential neighborhood home. The kids were always there. My friends were always there. Everyone kind of gathered. My house was the gathering place. And it was wonderful because everyone knew my mom, loved my mom, hung out with my mom, and my mom, with respect to others, to the other parents, would keep them informed as to what was going on in her house. But everyone always felt comfortable at my home. And later on in high school, it started to change. Everyone's still comfortable. Everyone's still coming over, but I noticed her retraction, whereas she would always want to hang out and be involved. It was more so, I'll see you guys later. I'm going out. She became hyper busy, where it wasn't like that before.
You know, it's interesting because I would see Denise out and about and everything. We always talk about how both of us, like, do we really need to be this busy? But Denise, what were your biggest concerns when you realized that you were having mental issues?
My biggest primary concern was the household and the house and Elena's
Mhm,
perception of what was going on. Because as she said, she was in high school
mhm,
and there was a noticeable change of me withdrawing. Even if I was home, I would stay in my room as opposed to come out and hang out with the kids for a minute or have friends over and socialize. So my biggest concern when I realized that my entire behavior was beginning to shift and not shift back to what I was typically, usually normally functioning as, was what was going to happen with her? How was she going to handle it? And then the other thing was the public perception, because as you said, we were out and about all the time. We were involved in a lot of different things, and we attended all the events and the activities, and the function of my job, even though I retired locally, I still had a major contract nationally that allowed me to continue the work that I had been doing. So
Mm-hmm.
it really became a challenge for me to continue the facade of everything was okay. There were times when I would come in after one of those everything was okay, which I thought I was giving off the persona of, and just literally crumble because it was just too much. In
Mm-hmm.
retrospect, I'm seeing now that there were occasions where I didn't come off as everything was okay. And that's all right. I see it now, I understand it now, and it allows me to talk more openly about why it's necessary for you not to fight that facade. You have to generally dig deep and understand
Mm-hmm.
what's going on around you. But in terms of the biggest concern, it was with Alaina and her friends, because, like she said, we had open house every
Uh-huh.
weekend. We had open house, and primarily, I was one of those moms. I'd rather have you home with your friends than out in the street, me not knowing what you're going through and what you're doing. So
Amen. I know about that. I
so
do
that
know
was
about that. So, Alaina, you were set to go away to college, and
Yes.
something happened on that plane ride that made you say, maybe not so much now.
And I can attribute nothing that to nothing but God, because we went to orientation. I remember it as if it was yesterday. It was the same weekend that Michael Jackson passed away. We were at the Macy's in North Carolina. I was at orientation for school in Chapel Hill, and we I picked my roommate, I picked my classes, I picked my books, I slept
Everything.
for the night. I came home. We go through the airport. We get off the plane, and I looked at my mom and I said, "I'm not going." And she goes, "Excuse me, what?"
Mhm.
We just
Mhm.
through this whole thing, and I promise you, we were riding the monorail from the terminals, in between the terminals, at MCO, and I said, "I'm not going." Why? What's wrong? Are you nervous? Are you scared? I said, I'm not any of those things, but I'm not going. And so that's nothing but God, because I can't pinpoint a reason. The school was wonderful. It is everything I'd ever hoped for in school. And we made that pivot to stay local. And it is, in hindsight, probably not even probably, the best decision I ever made.
Mhm. You also had a moment where Denise, you carried on the busyness of
oh
cooking
yeah,
for Alaina and her friends and bringing food
yeah.
over. Then
Yeah.
after a while, that stopped too. Was that
Yeah.
another sign, Alaina?
Yeah. So even though I stayed local, I still moved out. So I was about 45 minutes away from mom.
Mhm.
First time we'd ever been an extended amount of time away from each other, but it started out wonderful. I had great roommates. I had a strong friendship network here. And my mom was still just as much a part of my life then as it was when I was home. She would cook dinner for me and my roommates. We would have
Yeah.
girl time once a week. She'd come over, we'd watch whatever trashy reality show was on at the time, just to have some time to get together. My roommates considered her a second mom. Everybody had her number. Everybody called mom when they needed something. And there's communications that to this day, I'm
To
sure
this
they
very
had
day.
directly with her that
Mhm.
didn't include me,
Mhm.
because that is the level of comfort that she brought to us,
Yeah.
and the level of just mothering. And I mean, Monica, there's just a comfort in knowing that your children are cared for in some capacity. And it went from just me and my roommates at dinner to full on 20 people coming to my apartment for Sunday dinner with Elena's mom and Sunday dinner
Mhm.
with Miss Denise. And it was wonderful. And then that too changed. The retraction started. It started once a week to every other week to I really don't feel good, or I'm really tired, or I'm not really feeling being social today. All of those things sound normal. But when they become repetitive and it became, I haven't seen you in 3 weeks and I see you twice a week at the minimum. I talk to you 3 times a day sometimes, and now I'm only talking to you once every few days. So what's really going on?
Was she honest? Was she open? What did you say, Denise?
No, I wasn't honest. I wasn't open. With her not being home, living at home, the accountability wasn't there. I could come home and just do my thing. And then when I did communicate or when I did see her, I tried to continue that whole mothering, hanging out, just spending good time together. Again, like I said, in my mindset, I was still portraying a very well put together person. But Alaina saw it, and even some of the people around her saw it because her friends were very nurturing and supportive as well. On my side, I had started to totally isolate myself from my circle. And it was a pretty big support circle that I had, or at least colleagues that I knew. And some of that was because I didn't want them to see me in a not so wonderful Denise position. And some of it was because they decided that they weren't going to invite me to the picnic anymore. So it wasn't just me making a conscious decision. But once it seemed like the murmur got out that there may be something going on, there were some things and some activities and some people that actually dropped away and pulled away. And I had to deal with that as well, because at that time, that was pre knowing what was happening. That was pre getting involved with organizations such as NAMI and other types of educational experiences. So I was taking it very personal, and that fed into my crisis.
I would imagine. I
It
would
definitely,
imagine.
yeah, it definitely fed into it.
And then you become even more isolated.
Oh, for
What
sure.
about Alaina when you would go home to visit mom? Did you do just a pop up just to see how she was doing?
That was a part of my, if you want to call it, case management journey. I
Yeah.
used to, in the very beginning, it'd be a call. Hey, I'm thinking about coming over today. You want to grab dinner? Can you cook dinner? You want to hang out? Do you want to meet somewhere? And then I'll just come back and stay at the house. Then it turned to, hey, I'm going to go out with my friends. Don't really feel like driving all the way home. So just be prepared for me to be on the couch when you wake up. Um, I was the kid. I am still the kid. I will never not have a key to my mom's house. So front door, back door, and all the windows. But I learned that in doing so, it gave her time to get it together. And I noticed that if I really wanted to know what home looked like, I was just going to have to start popping up. And that is what I did. And it unveiled so much to me in terms of what productivity looked like, what her busy looked like, because it was always I'm busy, or I have a meeting, or I have something. And the nature of her work did call for meetings and things. And this was, pre-COVID, pre everything being virtual, pre-Zoom and Teams, where you still need to kind of have it together in order to meet. This was dialing into a conference call line where you could be anywhere, and doing anything and still be there. And so, yeah, those pop-up visits were, I would say, the second phase of this is not what it
Something's
needs to
wrong.
be. Yeah.
Something wrong.
Yeah. And
Something's wrong.
I hadn't quite gotten to it's wrong. I
Okay.
had internalized it a lot of I'm not home anymore. And now my mom doesn't have that focal point. And so the selfish part of me said it was me. And that I made it about me, because I'm an only child and it was just me and my mom. And now I'm off doing my thing and mom is home. So
From your perspective, Alaina, how did it feel the first time that you had to make a decision to have mom treated medically? Were you prepared? Did you have help? Did you ask for help?
not at all.
Okay.
Not
Yeah.
not in the least.
Um,
I would say that was probably top 5 most traumatic experiences of my life. I am so grateful for the resources that are now because they weren't when when we were experiencing what we went through. Um, Before the knowledge base, before the trend of mental health and wellness, the answer to crisis was 911. That was the only thing to come to mind.
Mhm.
Um, and I would say it escalated pretty quickly. It wasn't a lot of in between of let's go to
Mm.
counseling or let's do this or let's try these things, not externally with me.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the
So, in
first,
other words, you came in, not to cut you off, I'm so sorry.
no, no.
Did you say maybe come home one day and just decide, "Mom, we gotta do something?"
In the more vulnerable aspect of this conversation, absolutely. I
mhm.
came home and noticed that she hadn't eaten, and there was no remnants of food. There was no, the house was stale. And that may not make sense to everyone, but it was stagnant. It was stale. It felt abandoned almost. And then to put eyes on her, it was reflective of the house. She was stale, she was stagnant, she was abandoned. And just in the spirit of honesty and in the spirit of,
Yeah.
being transparent, it
Mhm.
was a battle. It was not a, yes, Alaina, I need help, let's go get help. It was very defensive. I'm fine. I don't need your help. I do not need you to take care of me. Please don't do this. Please, I'm not doing this with you. It was a battle. And when I realized that, as I think any daughter would, it's not a battle that I'm going to win. I can't make you do something that you're not willing to do. And I didn't have the resources to navigate how to do that
Mhm.
without
And,
other intervention.
and if I can jump in, Monica, just to set the
Mm.
scenario, I was in psychosis. I had gone past the point of actually being able to control my behavior so that when she did come in, I could switch up and switch out. So the
Ah.
disorder that I live with, psychosis is a major part of it. And I did battle. I was very defensive because I had to give in, and I did not willingly want to give in. And
Mhm.
watching her go through what she had to go through to this very day haunts me.
Mhm.
Sorry about that.
That's
Um,
okay.
and the
You
whole
said that
scenario
haunts you.
was crazy. It was
Mhm.
absolutely bizarre.
You had help, though. You had a very dear friend kinda intercede and help. Alaina, did you reach out to someone else? Or did that person notice and be willing to step in? Because sometimes a daughter can't do it all by herself.
No, and this dear friend is my dear friend. It's hers first. I will say that. There's nothing
Okay.
that's going to come between my mom and her.
Yeah.
However, much like I picked up the phone and automatically could tell that this is not it, she picked up the phone and was like, oh no, this
Yeah.
is not it. And when I want to make sure that I drive home, it was not a drive over. It was not a pop by. It was not I'm just going to put eyes on you for 2 minutes. It was, I'm getting on a plane. I'm putting my life on hold and I am coming to be with you, whether you like it or not, for however long it takes. Um,
Ah, bless her
and
heart.
it
Yeah.
was, when we opened the door, I won't forget it. My mom crumbled to the floor.
Mhm.
I literally lifted up my hands and said, "Oh, thank you, God," because I don't know what what else to do. Um, and it wasn't in the beginning. I won't say it was immediate. By the time that happened, I had moved home, and just to again make it relevant for people that may be going through it at the same time, this happened over a period of 6 months or so. This wasn't immediate. This was a few Baker Acts. This was a few hospitalizations later. So this was not, I just want to encourage people that may be in the midst of going through this right now, that there's no quick fix.
Mhm.
Um, Nor was I committed to it the whole time. I walked out of the house a couple of times and said, I am not capable of this today.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and in the midst of psychosis, it is not necessarily seeing things or yelling or screaming. It was nights where she wouldn't sleep. And since now I'm home, now I'm not sleeping. It was nights of or days of I'm going to cook everything in the house.
Okay.
Literally every bag of pasta or bag of rice or every little, you go to the store and you buy ingredients and you only need this much of this
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
Well, I'm going to put the rest of that thing in this pot of whatever.
Uh-huh.
And so now we have dishes galore and food that doesn't quite make sense, or just so many different pieces of life that have been just kind of piled on top of each other.
Mhm.
And it doesn't make sense. But how
Yeah.
do you outwardly describe that? How do I go to my friends and say, no, you can't come over here today? How do, people are calling asking how my mom's doing, and how do you say, no, she's not great, knowing this platform that she has? How do you treat the person and keep the secret and keep your sanity and be honest with
And I
yourself?
think that is so telling of a lot of people out there that are
Mhm.
trying to deal with helping a loved one, whether it's with a mental disorder or any type of medical condition, severe medical condition. The loved one's life takes a severe shift and change, just as I took a severe shift and change. And
Mhm.
it's they talk about stigma, and I truly understand and believe stigma to be a big barrier to people achieving mental wellness. But at that time, we didn't know. Folks did not know, and many people still don't know, do not know how to handle a crisis situation or what it should even look like. The police department didn't know how to handle a crisis situation and what it looks like.
Mhm.
So having Alaina witness this and having to be almost the sole proprietor of managing this changed her personality as well. She withdrew, and she was very conscious about what was going on around her, and what was being perceived about
Mhm.
us as a family, and
Yeah.
even herself personally as a person who was 6 months ago having living her best life on a college campus. So it's the emphasis again on the caring loved one's life changes and shifts, yet there's not the same equal level of support and guidance available to them as
Mhm.
they too walk through these crises.
You mentioned a couple of things that I want us to go back over and just explain to people. You mentioned the word psychosis. I want to know what that is, what that feels like. You also mentioned Baker acted, and people need to understand that that is what that is. So let's go back to the word psychosis.
Psychosis manifests itself differently in different people. In me, it meant that I constantly had racing thoughts that had me constantly in motion and in action. I could not stop moving around. Like Alaina said, I didn't sleep. If I didn't sleep, I wanted to hear music. I wanted to dance, and I wanted it to be loud. Okay. If I was home alone, I was pacing around. If I was
Mm.
out, I was up and down trying to figure things out. So that's how psychosis manifested itself in me. Now, when we talk about Baker Acts really are a result of when someone perceives that you may harm yourself or you may harm someone else. That's what we know now. But as Alaina said earlier, Baker Act was what you did when you thought somebody was really out of control.
Okay.
And at the time, the law enforcement department we dealt with, that's how they perceived a Baker Act. Today it's an entirely different deal. They understand that there's a process between coming to the home and taking someone and putting them into a behavioral center. That there is a process to determine if this person is at risk or is at risk of harming someone else. And oftentimes it's de-escalated so the person does not have to be taken out of the environment.
But you had to be taken out.
I had to be taken out. I had to be taken out. And it was humiliating for me personally, but I was kind of sort of so out of it that it didn't break my heart then. But looking back at it and understanding that Alaina was standing right there, and we're in a community and we live in a cul-de-sac community, and you know how neighbors are, the blinds are opening and people are coming outside. It's just heartbreaking.
And
Go ahead,
I'm
Alaina.
sorry. I will say that where we're at now and what's going on now, we've come a long way.
Come a long way.
The sheriff's department, I mean, every major law enforcement department in Central Florida has done an amazing job of training their officers, creating those safe spaces. You have CIT training, you have different response options, you have different lines you can call outside of 911 in the midst of crisis. But in that moment, it didn't seem like there was an alternative. And looking back in hindsight, I don't think there was. Now, while I don't want to say that it needed to happen, I have zero regrets on the actions that I took. It really kind of catapulted our journey into what navigating crisis looks like. At the time, our public hospital, more or less, was not equipped for the amount of people they were receiving. And so the only way to get treatment was to be Baker acted. There wasn't a lot of voluntary admissions. There wasn't a lot of hospitals that could undertake the amount of people that they were seeing. And when you think about mental illness and crisis and that break that happens, a lot of the time they equate that to young adults. You're talking between 18 to 35. And that wasn't my mom. My mom was in her 50s. And so when the officers are responding or when the intake people at the hospital are looking, they're like, yeah, we don't have the space, the time, the capacity. Y'all will figure it out.
And the other assumption is that it's drug related. And that's the waiting period for them to determine, first of all, if they're able to test you, which takes a very long time. But a lot of times they assume that it's drug related, that you're hyped up off of some type of drug.
Some
And there's no way to
hallucinogenic.
explain that. Remember, mental illness and mental disorders display themselves through behavior, period, dot. And it's not until you're able to be tested to put away the fact that it is not drug related. But then where do you go from there? Because there's not a test to determine exactly what disorder, what it is, what trauma that you are undergoing that's facilitating this behavior.
This is so much to unpack. And what my prayer is this evening is that Denise and Alaina's story will touch someone to make them get the help that they need. And I say make, because like Denise said, if she had had it her way, she wasn't going anywhere. She wasn't going to she was just going to manage it. She was going to self-medicate, I'm sure. She was going to do all kinds of things to quiet her racing mind. It's not like she had something telling her what to do. No, there are different manners of mental illness. And so once you wrap your mind around that, that's the key. Wrapping your mind around the fact, because Denise, as you said, you do so many things for so many people, and not just here in Orlando or Central Florida, but we're talking nationally. and to have to
Absolutely, yeah.
step down from all of that, that's a heck of a thing, and you said that there was good, bad, and ugly with people who just kind of swept you to the side,
Disassociated. Yeah.
disassociated because they didn't know what to say or how to handle it. And so what would you say to them, Denise?
I, I would say to them and to others to take a step back now with
Mhm.
the attention and emphasis that has been put on learning more about mental illness and mental wellness. We
Mhm.
all need to take that checkup to understand better because whether we like it or not, look to your left, look to your right, somebody is going to be impacted
Yeah.
by
Mhm.
either a disorder or just an episode. And the better prepared you are to be supportive, and sometimes that means getting out the way and not saying a thing and connecting them to the right resource, the right person that can simply be there to listen to them. We have a
Mhm.
tendency to want to fix and to want to correct and want to know what the end result would look like. And in many medical conditions, that is possible because they can be tested and treated. But when it comes to mental disorders, it cannot be instantaneously tested and treated. It's a long time, long term commitment.
Yeah.
And as a caregiver, we have to be supportive to those folks as well as to the person who's being directly affected. Because
Mhm.
long term means for myself, but it also means for Alaina. And she
Yeah.
made the commitment to do the long term. But she was very
Mhm.
transparent in saying that sometimes she said, I can't do this anymore. I'm out.
Mhm.
It's just too much.
Yeah. Because I think it also comes a point with mom, you got to help me. Mom, you got to do what the
Mhm,
people are saying. Mom,
mhm.
So Alaina, as a caring loved one, what are important parts of your wellness plan and who and what is your support system?
You learn as you go. The best part about where we are at now is being a resource to those that are going through what we went through. I would say the biggest thing is to have a plan for the unplanned. It doesn't make sense if you're not going through it, but each time we went through either an admission or a change in medication or something of that nature, we learned what we needed to know and we wrote it down and we kept track of it. And so that first situation never happened again. And then the next situation never happened again. And it got to a point where even to this day, it's a very honest, I am not okay today, or my very honest, you are not okay today, or my
Mhm.
mom telling me, you're not okay
You're not
today.
okay today. Yeah.
And so, what that looks like is just having a plan for the unplanned, knowing that the next step is what it is. And then if there's nothing wrong with seeking help or guidance or treatment, and it doesn't always look like a medical professional. It needs to at some point, but understanding that mental health care and your mental wellness journey is as a community. And we can't be well. Like we can't be well if everyone approaches it as an individual. And so I like to say you take the I in illness and you change it to we, and it becomes illness to wellness. And so when you
Mm.
take the I out of it and you stop internalizing what you're going through and reach out, and it could be to me, it could be to mom, it could be to your neighbor, it could be to the doctor. And there are plenty of resources via phone, chat, text that are out there. But any step is a good step in your mental wellness journey. And
Mhm.
so that would be what I learned in that space.
So let me ask, we're talking about some numbers, and I kind of text you and said, have some of those numbers handy.
Yeah.
Can you share some of those numbers? You call them soft calls.
Yes.
So can you have
Yes.
the soft calls and then the 800s and the 988s? Can you share those?
Yes. Yes. So I actually just got off a call with NAMI about the success of 988 and what it's seen in its 1 year anniversary. So for those of you who don't know, 988 is the toll-free number. Similar to calling 911, you call 988. You'll be prompted to answer a few questions, such as your language preference, or if you're in the midst of crisis and need someone to come to you. But once you get past those initial prompts, you're going to be routed to someone like me or someone like my mom, someone that's been trained to answer the call, but just to listen. You're not being routed to a psychiatrist. You're not being routed to a 911 call center. You're not being routed to someone who's going to show up at your house. You're really being routed to someone who can listen to you and guide you through where you're at, and meet you where you are. And it's a beautiful thing. And it is so needed because you don't have to be in psychosis. You don't have to be on the deep end of things. You could be wading in the water and just say, I need someone to listen to me right now. And that's why we have 988. Anywhere in the country, you can call 988 and someone's going to answer. The other calls or the other lines, particularly that I want to highlight, the NAMI helpline. NAMI is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. They are throughout the country. It's a grassroots effort. So again, you're calling and you're speaking with someone. It's not automated prompts. It's not an AI robot. You're talking to somebody. That helpline is 800-950-NAMI, which is 800-950-6264. And again, a provider resource. They'll make referrals. They'll support you, and they'll refer you to some support groups and support classes and different things you can do to help yourself. And then in the event that you are in crisis, we have the National Suicide Prevention Line. Again, national, it's a lifeline. These are people that are trained, professionally trained to help you navigate through your crisis in the moment. And that number is 1-800-273-TALK. So 1-800-273-8255. And again, those are going to be a little more skilled, trained crisis professionals that are there to identify where you're feeling your weakest point and walk you off of that ledge.
And these numbers are available not only to the people who are going through the crisis, but I urge caregivers to reach out to these numbers as well, because you're going through the crisis along with your loved one. So the persons on the other end, like I can talk about Alaina's experience in supporting me when you reach out to me if you're dealing with someone who is going through a crisis.
Now, Denise, a couple of quick questions as we kind of wrap. As a person living with a mental disorder, what are important parts of your wellness plan, like daily? Do you get up and say something? Are there affirmations? And we know that your support system is your daughter, but have you added on to that support system? So it's twofolds. How do
Absolutely.
you?
I get up every morning and I check. I just sit by my bed if I can get out of my bed, and I genuinely sit just to assess. Some mornings I wake up because my mind is already racing and it wakes me up. So
Wow.
that's a sign for me to, okay, I have to put this on plan B right now because I'm too anxious to handle it productively. And I'm able to do that. And I think more people feel as if, well, I have to go to work, I have to get the kids to school, I have to do this, I have to do that. Make the time, take the time and make the time to do that when I get up mental wellness check, because it definitely will help you navigate your day a little bit more productively for the most part. I've also depend on organizations such as NAMI, not so much the organization itself, but the resources and support. And as Alaina alluded to, being able to facilitate the resources that they provide throughout the community. That has really strengthened me because it keeps me mindful of the fact that I have to adhere to what God's plan is. This is
Yeah.
not my doing. This was not my choice. I can't
Yeah.
put this on anything or anybody. I have to remember God has a plan, and this is part of his plan for me. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest aha moments out of all of this is understanding I have to hold on to that, Monica, because if I
Yeah.
don't hold on to it, then I'm going to really dissolve into trying to point a finger or trying to figure it out on my own and by myself. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not that. It's part of his bigger plan for my life.
Are you on medication daily?
I am on medication daily. I have been through so many medications, and that's
Yeah.
the other horror about mental disorders. There's a limited amount of testing that can accurately pinpoint the first, second, or third time out the combinations to address your specific issues. So
Mm-hmm.
I have been on all kinds of what we call cocktails and have gone through some really bad experiences being on those cocktails. So finally, and I'm blessed and grateful and appreciative, I'm on minimal medication because I also supplement that with mindfulness in terms
Yes.
of, as I said, getting up in the morning and understanding where I'm at. I don't go to the gym to exercise, but I do a lot of walking around and pacing, etc., to get that anxiety level down. And
Mm-hmm.
in that morning, when I know this is not the day to try to do that presentation, this is not the day to try to get those reports done or go out and have lunch and hang out with the girls, I cut it off. I don't force myself,
Mm.
I don't push myself, and the consequences will be as they are, but I have to keep myself in check. I have to.
Yeah.
I don't have the luxury of not doing that. And a lot of
Yes.
people have that luxury. I don't have the luxury of not doing that. The consequences are much bigger than
Mm-hmm.
somebody just being a little annoyed because I put off an appointment.
Right, right, right. How is now surviving different from then crisis? Alaina and then you, Denise.
This is happy. Um, this is this is choosing joy every day.
Yeah.
Um, and every day is not perfect by no stretch of the imagination. And in that, it's realizing that this is, like Mom said, it's preordained. It's bigger than us. Um, but also recognizing that we have to be bigger than us. And by no means are we changing the globe or, you know, taking over the planet. But if it reaches just one person, then it's one more person.
Mm-hmm.
If it reaches just one family, then it's just one more family. But we only can do that in the spirit of transparency.
Mhm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think, especially in our community, in the Black community, we keep secrets as a means of a facade. Um, and so when you
Mm.
say, what does thriving look like? Thriving is, I don't have to keep secrets. That weight is not on me. I don't have to walk through life trying to keep up this appearance that everything on the outside to you is perfect, because this is perfect. Because if you knew what we've been through, we don't look like it. And
Hello.
so we are happy in this space.
Mhm.
What about you, Denise? How is now surviving different from then crisis?
Real simple. Crisis was hopelessness. And there were times when I gave up. I'm very and open about my journey. There were times when I gave up. So my prayer was, if I wake up, if I wake up, but I don't want to go through this anymore. So now when I'm feeling low or I'm feeling as if I'm going back into a dark space, my prayer is, when I wake up, thank you for waking me up, knowing that I will wake up if that's his plan for me. But it's no sense of hopelessness anymore. And that's really joyous for me compared to what I was feeling when I was in crisis.
Wow. Any blessings that you want to share that you believe are a direct result of this mental wellness journey? Alaina?
I have my mom. I
Ah.
Woo.
that's
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that it doesn't get any more direct than that. There are days that I woke up that I wasn't sure I was going to have my mom.
Mhm.
Um, there were days that I wondered if my son was going to have a grandmother, if I was going to have that conversation with him. And I don't worry about that anymore. Not in that space. Um, Everybody needs their mom. And I think that's a message that everyone can relate to. And if not their mom, a mom. Not, we know
Mhm.
in 2024 that looks different for a little bit of everybody. But the biggest blessing to come out of this crisis is my profound respect for her, um, and my admiration for sticking it out.
Mhm.
Wow. Thank you.
And not giving up. And not
Yeah,
giving up. What about you,
yeah.
Denise? Any blessings that you want to share that you believe are a direct result of this mental wellness journey? I know every time we get together, there's some tears here. So, yeah.
You know it. You know it. The one of the biggest, if not the biggest blessing, is my profound leap in my faith, in understanding that this was not, I, as I think many people do, successful people do, I took credit for all the good stuff that happened in my life. I gave
Mhm.
thanks, but it was my doing, and I did this and I did that, and I was a good mom, and I did this and I did that. And understanding now, it has really put me in a different space as I deal daily with living. Those things that used to be so much of a priority in my life, some of them are basically non-existent now. I could care
Mm,
less. Okay,
okay.
I really could care less. This is me, and this is who I am. But the most positive blessing, and I know we're having this love fest between Alaina and I, but I constantly tell people she's my shero. I looked up to her. I look up to her as the most amazing woman in my life, because I know the in between, the stories that we won't share. There's some
Mhm.
stories in there that we don't share, we won't
Mhm.
share.
Yeah.
Those episodes, and seeing that and seeing her now just thrive. And she's one of the bad sisters now.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
understanding that she's right back where I had left her off in 11th grade. That vision that we all have for our children. Yeah. So she's my shero, and that's the blessing that I have,
Mhm.
that to be able to say that and look at her and know that she's well. She's
She's
okay.
well.
She's
She
well.
is. Last question for you, Denise. What's next? I know that you've shared the fact that you want to start a collective hub for mental wellness.
Yes. Yes.
How soon can we get that started? Because one of the things that I'm hoping with this conversation is twofold or many folds, many layers. One, that people in crisis will get the help no
Yes.
matter what you think people may say. That's not important.
It's not
Your day to
important.
day survival is the most important thing. That's the first thing. So, opening up your mouth and admitting to someone that you need help, because a
Yeah.
lot of times we're not going to do it on our own. Going through the journey, if one med doesn't work, don't stop. Don't
Mm-mm.
stop. Let
Mm-mm.
the doctors know this is not working for me. Be able to find a hub of people who understand what's going on and can see when crisis is about to begin and can kind of take you by the elbow and just point you in the right direction. I want people to realize that for themselves. But the first thing is that with anything, you've got to want to get the help,
We have
because
to.
you could stay in psychosis and
Oh.
crisis. There's so many people walking around in crisis right now.
Mm-hmm.
But oh, if they would just give in, oh, if they would just open their mouth and realize that mental health is available to them, that there are places that you can go to and you can receive the help. And you can also receive the talk therapy that you need, because taking a pill is not going to be the only be all
No.
end all.
No.
That's just the
No.
tip of it. But getting
No.
some help, finding someone to talk to. And what I have in front of me is a plan that Denise has to make it thought partners, and it's a focus group. And I'm so glad and grateful that she's got me on here as a community catalyst, and I am honored to be that. And I am
Yeah.
ready for our next meeting, or our first meeting. I am ready because the checkup from the neck up is what I like to call it.
Yep.
We all need to have a baseline, and we all need to know when we're not okay and how to get back to that baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that's
And I,
what I'm hoping that this conversation will do. What were you going to say, Lena?
I said it's okay to not be okay.
Hey, yeah.
And to respect where you're at and honor where you're at, because if you don't have a insight into what not okay looks like, you're striving for something you don't know is out there.
Hmm.
Without
I
that mental fitness check-in of this is what not okay looks like, you're never going to know what okay is.
Right.
mhm.
That's
I
true.
said
That's
to
true.
someone today, I know that I was expected to be at an event last week, and it was a huge event. I had every intention on being there, but I'm going through some stuff, some personal
Mm-hmm.
things, and I know that when people see me, they expect a big smile. They expect
Yeah.
encouragement from me. They expect me to have answers for them. And that day, I didn't feel like answering, talking to anyone, smiling, or whatever. So I was on a Zoom call today, and they said, what do you do when that happens? And I said, I finally realized that it's okay to not be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel guilty for that.
That's
I can
right.
go and I may
That's
read,
right.
I may do whatever else is going to bring me back down to, Monica May. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not a persona that we need to keep up. It's real life. And if I could
Yeah.
just leave you guys with that, um, we got to get this going. This is going to be amazing.
Absolutely.
It's going to
Absolutely. We'll
change
follow up
lives.
this week.
Hmm. So, any last comments? 30 seconds apiece. Go ahead, Denise, Mama first.
Monica was alluding to a hub that we're working to develop. And what we perceive, or my experiences, we have a lot of different organizations and groups that have large audiences. I am
Mhm.
not a therapist, so I cannot talk in terms from the clinical side. But we have between our Black churches, our fraternities, our sororities, our civic organizations, we have leaders that have platforms through which they can share this information. So what we're trying to do, Monica, is really connect all the dots. You have had endless number of people from the therapist side to the consumer side
Mm.
to the advocate side. What would happen if we all got together and came up with just a plan to share that information and get that
That is,
information out to the community on a consistent basis,
that is.
organized? You as
Mhm.
a community catalyst, you know every community organization that's out there and you're respected like none other in our community. So that's
Thank
why
you.
we identified you as our does this mean Monica does the work? Monica is the thought leader that allows us to directs us to as to how the work needs to be facilitated.
I'm grateful. Thank you. Elena, 30 seconds.
My 30 seconds is going to be to empower the person listening, share conversations like this one. And you don't always have to label your self-care as mental wellness. If you get together with a group of friends and go bowling, if you get together with a group of friends and sit somewhere, not outside, it's 100 degrees, but get together, do something, meet someone, talk to someone, ground yourself. As we get into this political landscape of the next 3 months, unplug, disconnect, take care of yourself from the neck up, like Miss Monica said, because there's no bad time to start your mental wellness journey, and there's no bad time to connect someone with a resource that can help them. You never know what's going on when you're not around.
No,
That's right. That's right. You
no.
said how many days? You said 3 months or so. I want to remind everybody there's a big election that's coming up next month. And that's
Okay.
where we've got to put somebody in Senate for the state of Florida. I was on a hour long Zoom call last night Uh, that is coming up. We have our ninth judicial state of attorney that we got. We got a lot going on, and you are so right, because this political climate right now could be something that could lead people to
Oh
depression.
yeah,
So let's
yeah.
just
Absolutely.
woosah as much as we can. Reach out to people when you need to, and just open your mouth if you feel when you are
And
in crisis.
listen,
Yeah,
and listen.
that's the other thing. Listen, when you know what you know about someone and it appears to be different, tap them on their shoulder and ask them, do you want to talk?
Hmm.
I can be there
I'm here
for
to
you.
listen.
I'm
Hmm.
here to listen. So
And not to
I,
fix, just to hear you.
that's it. That's it. This is how crisis strengthened a mother and daughter. Denise Epps, Alaina Ritchie,
Thank you,
my
Monica.
blessings to you both. And thank you. Don't let this
You.
be the last time that we get together on One Take Live,
Oh
please.
no,
Oh
no.
All
no.
right.
We'll
Thank you
keep it
so
going.
Oh, of course. Thank you both so much for being on. And don't forget, the only way we can get this information out there is through you. So I'm asking you to like us, click the share button, let your family know that we're on 6:30 every Thursday evening. And it's important to have these conversations, or 6 o'clock every 6:30 every Thursday evening. I want you to help us spread the word. And One Take Live, of course, streams to Facebook, YouTube. We're also on Spotify, Apple, all of the popular platforms. This show is done with you in mind. So once again, thank you so much for joining me on One Take Live.